For more, let's bring in our EU correspondent, Dave Keating, who's talking to us today from Brussels. Dave, in this meeting, we expect EU leaders to focus on speeding up the vaccination programme. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, the performance on this has been incredibly varied in the EU. So part of this is going to be a continued exercise in exchanging best practices. But they're also very concerned about supply. There is a supply crunch now because pharma companies are not delivering what they promised they would deliver. Now, the Commission is set to give EU prime ministers and presidents an update about efforts to create new production facilities. One idea is to give the IP rights to these vaccines to other pharma companies so that they could use their production facilities to make extra doses. But the big question is going to be whether the prime ministers and presidents ask the Commission to use the export mechanism that they put in place several weeks ago to block exports of vaccines. There is big frustration here as EU countries look at the U.S. vaccination campaign, which is going quite well, going at a good pace, but the U.S. is not exporting any vaccines. Donald Trump had an executive order banning vaccine exports in December, and the Biden administration still hasn't undone that. And so the EU, the EU is exporting a lot of vaccines to countries like the UK and Canada, and EU leaders are wondering, should we really use this export mechanism to block exports from companies that are not meeting their promised delivery schedule to the EU? Now, I have a feeling that the EU leaders are going to be closely watching a European Parliament committee meeting that's happening just down the street at the same time as the summit, where MEPs are going to be grilling representatives from the pharma companies. Particularly, they're going to be paying attention to AstraZeneca's representative. There were reports earlier this week that AstraZeneca, in addition to not meeting its promised delivery schedule for the first quarter, also won't be meeting its schedule for the second quarter. The company has denied that, but MEPs are going to want details from AstraZeneca and guarantees that it actually is going to be able to deliver the vaccines it promised in the second quarter of this year. And if they're not happy with what the representative says at that European Parliament committee, they may ask the Commission today to restrict exports of the AstraZeneca vaccine that are made here in the EU.
Dave, tell us about what else is going to be discussed today. There's been some talk of the possible closure of the EU's internal borders. Is that something that might come up?
Yeah, I mean, so several EU countries have closed their EU internal borders, which is something that's technically not allowed under the Schengen Code of the EU. For instance, Belgium here has had a complete ban on entering or leaving the country, except for essential reasons, for several weeks now. Now, the countries can use an exemption clause in the Schengen Code during emergencies, but this week the Commission said that 6 EU countries, including Belgium, are not meeting the requirements for that exemption because their blanket bans are disproportionate and not specifically targeted. So what we're going to see here is if the EU leaders can come to an understanding about how exactly the restrictions on non-essential travel within the EU should work. I think the key person to watch after today's meeting will be Belgium's Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo. He did wait until an EU summit last month before he put Belgium's travel ban into place. He interpreted that meeting as saying that he could go ahead with the ban. That is actually, Belgium's ban is going to end, scheduled to end on Monday. Tomorrow, the consultative committee here is going to meet to decide whether to extend it. So if the EU leaders put enough pressure on these 6 countries that have imposed the internal border closures, then we may see an announcement from De Croo tomorrow and from other EU leaders that they are changing blanket bans into something more targeted. The Commission is saying that a restriction on non-essential travel should be targeted only specifically to the dark red regions as defined by the ECDC that are particularly badly hit and shouldn't be a blanket ban on travel to all EU countries. So what we may see tomorrow is that Belgium keeps its ban on travel to and from countries outside the EU, but within the EU, it adopts a more targeted approach as recommended by the Commission and by the strategy that all 27 governments signed up to last month.
All right, Dave Keating in Brussels, thank you very much indeed.